Hi, I'm Chantal Marx. I head up a research team at F&B Wealth and Investments.
Hi, I'm Bright Khumalo and I'm a portfolio manager at Vestact. It's a small boutique asset management firm based here in Rosebank.
Yeah, in a fire station, which is really cool. Um,
It's a really cool building, that one.
yeah, I mean, with both of us being in markets and the world being what it is currently, I think that our conversation today will probably be focused on the market and investment impact of the COVID-19 outbreak, kind of breaking down how this story unfolded, how what we've seen in the past in terms of what epidemics and big financial shocks have done to markets, how long they take to recover, and also some of the opportunities that they are out there. So I guess we can start with what we thought this was when news first broke about the COVID-19 outbreak in China and what it ended up being. Bright, maybe you could take us through that.
Yes, so I mean, there had been reports that there's a bad flu going, and spreading quite rapidly down in China, and obviously, having been in the markets much longer, my colleague Paul basically said, "Oh, this sounds like the SARS virus of 02, 03," and I remember I was very young during that time to remember what the SARS virus was like or the news around it, and then I was certainly not in the market, so I had to I had to look for something that I could still remember, which was the H1N1 virus in 2009. Which was transferable between humans and animals, and the response there of governments towards this H1N1 virus. I thought it was mostly going to be like it because it sounded like it, and it's along the same lines. But this, unfortunately, it took us time to develop immunity to it, which is bad. It takes us back to the likes of the Spanish flu, which happened back in 1918, where it happened in three steps, basically, where we saw a lot of people getting sick initially and people not understanding what it was, and then the second wave where basically half the population on earth got it, and tens of millions of people passed away from it. We don't have the exact data around it. And then the last kick, the surprise towards the end, of the Spanish flu, which I find very interesting. The fact that you can still get data of how these things happen, and all the news clippings, because there were newspapers at that time, so you find these clippings in libraries and obviously online. There's a nice website that I shared with you where you can find all of these things. um, Now, coming back to this, and obviously we didn't know in terms of the impact or how it was spreading, so we had to closely monitor its impact in China, and which is what we continue to do, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I also when I first started being asked about COVID-19, at that point in time, everyone was just calling it the coronavirus, as if there was only one, and there will only ever be one. I think this will definitely be the one to remember, though. I look back at the previous big influenza epidemic in China. I look back at SARS. We kind of thought that the market impact will be pretty much the same. So a very kind of small a very small downturn, perhaps a 1 to 2% shock to Chinese GDP.
Yeah, I remember during the SARS time, it was just one quarter where you see a big drop in GDP, and then literally the following quarter, it just starts roaring back up again.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we thought it was going to be very contained towards China because they've had these sort of health scares before. And because they were so serious in their response, I mean, they were building hospitals in a matter of a day or two. So
Yep.
we honestly didn't think that it was going to spread to the extent that it did. But here we are, over 1.5 million people later, and it seems as if there's been, I mean, the breakout in Europe was incredible.
It was spectacular.
It was insane, and it doesn't seem as if it's going any better in the US. I think we'll chat about the South African experience a little bit later, but from an economic system perspective and from a financial markets perspective, the fallout was a lot bigger than expected. And I think that going into the rest of 2020, the economic growth impact is going to be substantial.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you talk about the economic, impact of, the coronavirus or COVID or whatever the people call it these days, the Rona. You look at people like Jim Chanos who, they're fundamental short sellers or those kind of guys that are always, trying to embrace such times because that's just their strategy, and people use them as sort of a hedge for times like these in their portfolios. He spoke about a very important point, I think, around the coronavirus, saying basically, if you want to look at economies across, the world, basically what they started to do in terms of company valuation is just write off the year 2020 as a zero, as like a non-event. Nothing happened in 2020. So you go back now to your 2019 valuations and you use that to predict, those kind of earnings you would have expected in 2020 for your companies, but for 2021 valuations. So then it gives you a clearer picture of where companies could potentially go after these, the big fallout in the economies and the recovery thereof. But obviously this, shouldn't be applied as a copy-paste method, because when you look at companies, that got affected the most, you're talking about travel and tourism, you're talking about casinos, you're talking about anything in entertainment, we're talking about concerts, all of those nice things that you like to do outside where you interact with people. Most of those companies are going to not be here tomorrow, unfortunately, and there's going to be a lot of consolidation. So if you're still very brave and you're still looking into investing into those businesses, just keep in mind that, yes, once the virus is done, that's not just like we're going to pick up where we left off. There's still going to be a lot of consolidation happening, a lot of, Chapter 11s, a lot of those kind of winding down of these businesses, and the good assets, will come up for sale, and not everyone will have the cash to actually fund these assets or buy these assets. So there's going to be a lot of rejigging, with banks involved there, and, private equity involved. Because, currently, when you look at private equity and where they're sitting in terms of cash hoard, they're one of the few investors or investment class that's sitting with a lot of cash. We expect a lot of activity from them going forward, but it's going to take a while to get there. So we shouldn't just think that, because you have money, you can start buying now. There's still going to be a lot of, that ripple effect that we're going to see in the economy, then into companies, then into people's jobs, and then that reverse again, and it's going to take quite some time.
Yeah, I think I saw a very interesting graph. I think it was put together by Goldman Sachs. I'm actually going to share it on the screen. So it basically looks at different types of bear markets, right?
Yes.
So they say that you get a structural bear market, a cyclical bear market, and an event-driven bear market. And perhaps just for people on the podcast who don't exactly know what a bear market is, it's basically when financial markets are sold off in excess of 20%, right? And we definitely entered a global bear market, particularly towards mid-March. I think markets have recovered somewhat, but you can you see the
Yes, I can see the chart. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So basically you get a structural bear market. So that's when you get a structural breakdown in the way that the economy functions. So the global financial crisis was an example of that.
Yeah. Yep.
The financial system was basically broken, and it triggered a structural bear market. A cyclical bear market, just a normal business cycle.
Yes, because it ebbs and flows.
Yes.
Yeah, they've had, estimated periods of how this happened, but it never actually happens like that. But things ebbs and flow. Yes.
Yeah, and then you've got these event-driven bear markets. So when I first saw this chart, I was like, well, good for us. This is definitely an event-driven bear market, right?
Correct.
what's since happened is I think that this has the ability to trigger a structural or a cyclical bear market. So
Most likely, yeah.
perhaps the correction we've seen now would be like the event correction, but you
Yes.
could probably see a prolonged downturn after this because this pause on the global economy is going to have a huge impact on economic activity going forward. And as you rightly mentioned, a lot of these businesses might not even exist in a few years.
Yes, yes. I mean, a good example would be the restaurant industry. So the restaurant industry in other countries where they've implemented lockdown, but they didn't take out, the delivery aspect of it, so people can still order. I'm not quite sure if that will net off, the foot traffic, because how restaurants make their money is very simple. You come in there, you buy the food, etc., etc. But it's actually the additional things you buy on top of that that actually goes down to the bottom line. Whereas the food itself is just to keep the lights on. So if you're telling me that you run a successful restaurant by delivery only, I'm inclined to say no, you're not. You're lying to me. But here in South Africa, it's even the extreme where you find it wasn't declared an essential service, so you can't order from Uber Eats to your favorite restaurant, meaning those businesses have had to shut down 100%. They're seeing no volume whatsoever, just like the same as the entertainment businesses, etc. What's worse is that most of these businesses still have those fixed running costs that still creep up, like rent, for example. I always use rent because it's an easier example. It's more real life and people can relate to it. Like rent, one of the best restaurants I know down the road from me, the Jolly Rogers, is on GoFundMe. And that's one of the most packed, most successful, where everyone went for sports, Monday night, Tuesday night, you name it. But now they find themselves in this condition where they have to, come to their supporters, their fans, and say, look, if you still want to see this brand and still want to enjoy your beer sometime in the future, you have to, help us to stay afloat. Because these businesses, realistically, they not only run, by equity, but they also have, some gearing in them. And it doesn't matter how little the gearing was, the fact that you have no volume anymore just, tanks your entire business. And this goes for the same big restaurant businesses. One that comes to mind is Famous Brands Local, or Restaurant Brands International, in terms of, internationally.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's more or less exactly the same for the guys in the leisure space, Sun International, Toho Sun.
Yeah,
Um,
travel and
I'm
tourism. Yep.
thinking I'm thinking City Lodge. No one's staying at the Road Lodge tonight, I'm pretty sure. And I'm
And there's
thinking
only
of,
so many people who can quarantine there, right?
yeah, absolutely. Perhaps they can have 3 or 4 of their hotels up for quarantine, but it's certainly not going to be the entire portfolio.
Exactly.
And then the clothing retailers are extremely affected. I mean,
Yep.
one of the big news stories that we've been following over the last week or two has been this tango between the property industry group, who are saying, oh, no, we'll give you a 35% discount for April. And the clothing retailer saying, no, we'll give you 20% of total rentals for April.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, these are the kinds of negotiations that are going on. But I think that in order to not see an entire stop to economic activity and to normalize an entry into some sort of a functioning world after lockdown, everyone
Yep.
has to do their little bit, and everyone has to do make their little compromises in order for the system to
To
function going
work.
forward.
Yes. Yes.
If you don't want, like, clothing retailers not paying rent, property owners not able to pay
Pay the
banks
banks.
interest, the
Yep.
bank saying, well, I don't care, we're going to liquidate. Ultimately, everyone has to say, okay, property owner, I'm going to give you a payment extension, or we're going to restructure your loans. The landlord says to the tenant, okay, cool, what can you pay? Let's do 30% instead of 20% that you are offering me. I really need the 30% to cover my overheads. And then the clothing retailer, who would be the tenant in this scenario, needs to keep on paying staff at least. and also keep suppliers comfortable from a cash flow perspective, because otherwise this thing gets completely out of control.
I mean, their biggest losers, like you said, absolutely has been the local REITs. We had a tweet interaction, you and I, about this much earlier. We said basically, well, the gist of the tweet was that, is this the end of REITs as we know it, basically? And the answer is definitely no. But the fact that the average REIT is about, 0.4, 0.5, 0.5 geared leverage, it's insane. It means basically for half their equity that they put in, half of it comes from debt, which is highly geared in our standards. I remember sitting in this was towards the end of last year, sitting at the fire station building at one of the results presentations there. One of these REITs coming in, and I just wanted to understand how they were going to refinance the debt, because I mean, I thought the interest was generously low, and there's no mention of retiring the debt. So, because I looked at some of the coupons, they were talking about having they've got 1 year here, they'll refinance, and 2 years there left, etc., etc. I was like, so how does the refinancing work? It's just, banks are just keen to roll the debt over. I was just like, without checking anything, don't worry, they'll definitely because I mean, if I don't stay levered at 0.5 or 0.4, I'm the stupid one who's not using the resources that they have in their access. But now come to this bad time, they're all basically in big trouble because of that leverage. And had there been maybe a REIT with no leverage and a bit of cash on hand, they could have weathered this, funny enough. Even though they wouldn't be receiving those monthly incomes, etc., etc., they would have had to restructure, definitely, but there would have been a lot that actually survived this. Not to say unscathed, but still yet, yet to be seen, something like that. But we just have to deal with what we see right now and follow it very closely and learn the lessons of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, I mean, so it just brings me to kind of another thought. I mean, within the REIT space, obviously not all REITs are made equal. Some of them are actually very well positioned for a world post-COVID-19.
And consolidation. Yep.
Absolutely. And in the South African space, we have a we have a REIT called Equitas, and it basically focuses on warehousing, so distribution services as well as logistics that kind of fits into a world that is primed for e-commerce. And I think we get lots of examples like that globally as well.
Yes.
And within the retail exposed REITs, I'm thinking that some of them would be more experience focused than just plain regional malls. And perhaps there's a trick there. So maybe a growth point is more interesting because it's got the V&A waterfront. And in a post-COVID world, people will still go to the waterfront, but they might not go to Brits Mall. So I think that's
the trade-off
around that.
Yes. But also it emphasizes the more local regional malls. We know that the businesses in the local regional malls, it will definitely also see a lot of consolidation, and maybe there'll be more vacancies there. Maybe they could be turned around into something else. But a regional mall is the most important thing today. It's basically an essential. And if that continues on going forward, regional malls will be more popular than your bigger, landmark malls. Like, why would I go to Midrand to go to Mall of Africa, for example? Or why would I go to Sandton if I live here already? If I lived in Kenya, maybe I would be interested in going to Sandton City, but I live here. I've been there. I've seen it all. I don't want to go there. There's people there, know? Yeah, so...
I mean, that kind of brings me. I've got another cool graph that I just want to share with you that I saw on Statista, which is such a fabulous platform. I don't know where it is right now.
It's one of my favorite platforms. I probably go there 10 times a day. They're just always up to date on what's happening.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I'm
I
actually
think
thinking of subscribing, like being a
same.
paying subscriber.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely something that I'll consider as well, because if you think about it, these guys are doing such fantastic news, and I'm basically just being, oh yeah, they're doing such fantastic things, and I'm basically being a parasite. But
Yes.
this is something that they put out 2 days ago. Really cool thing about Statista is that they put everything out for free around COVID-19. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, which is really nice.
Great for
And
their
yeah,
traffic.
yeah. And here they're saying, what are the changes to the general lifestyle of people expected to be due to COVID-19? So these are kind of changes that people have made currently. And I'm just thinking, what will be permanent? And where could we benefit from these permanent changes from a company or investment perspective? So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
staying home more. Um, I mean, we're absolutely on the platform that's going to benefit, right?
Yes. 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 I mean, we're doing this interaction there. Um, Staying at home more for China sort of makes sense because it's a big country, and you find that most family members are actually scattered around, so they're kind of used to this kind of environment where you stay in, you go online, you do your Google Hangout or the equivalent. Obviously, it'll be on WeChat or another Tencent, product. You hang out like how we do on House Party, for example. So they are more used to that because they've been doing that for quite some time. So to see them still high up on the list is actually quite interesting there in terms of staying at home more.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm thinking, I mean, in terms of companies that will benefit from people staying at home more, because I don't think in a post-lockdown world you're going to have people immediately go out
To the club.
and live their experiences. Um,
Yes.
don't get me wrong, I think the experience economy is still super excited, but they're not going to go to the club immediately. So
Yeah,
I
people are
think,
gonna suss out what's gonna happen next first
yeah,
and see who's getting sick or continues to get sick. Just for a couple of months, at least that's what the people I interact with were saying.
yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking that like staying at home more is very good for, obviously in the China sense, it's good for Tencent, which is good for Naspers and Prosus, which is locally listed. And then
Yes,
you have Netflix, I think, which will be a big net beneficiary from this, along with some of the other companies that are exposed to broadband internet and streaming services, like Comcast, for example.
Amazon
Um,
Prime, Amazon itself. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, these are all companies that I think will absolutely benefit from this. And then I'm thinking that public places like bars and restaurants being avoided, and going to the shops less and traveling less could be something that's more transitory. So you'll still see pain being felt for quite a while, but eventually people will go back out, right?
yeah, but to go come back to that point about the avoiding public spaces and like bars and restaurants, it's hard to unwire human nature. Like if you already have this lifestyle and you told yourself this is how you live, um, eh, we can go for lockdown for 3 years. You trust me, the first thing that will happen after 3 years, we'll see the housewives of Bedford View come out in drove and go to Tasha's because that's what they do. That's what they love doing. So I'm sorry to pick on all the housewives of Bedford View, but that's exactly what happened. It's the reality of of society today. I just use them as an example. But the biggest net winner for health here is that washing my hands more, because my word, it's disgusting when in public lavatories and you see people not washing their hands. So that's definitely the net winner. There is humanity and health. There's going to be less of this happening because people are just genuinely washing their hands. I think that's the biggest winner for me. Biggest loser, public transport. I doubt it in our environment in South Africa, hey, because what's the alternative? This is one of those Tina moments where I say, you say less public transport. I'm saying during COVID-19, taxis can pick up people 100% capacity. We negotiated for 70%, but they're not, adhering to that. So I don't see that happening, unfortunately, because people don't have the resources and there's no cheaper alternative to that.
But I mean, from a global vehicle sales perspective, would there
Yep.
not be a shift back to owning your own car again? And perhaps that could be good longer term.
Yes, actually, we can drill a bit deep into that conversation, because the initial conversation was, oh, millennials, they're this generation that doesn't like cars. They're quite keen of Uber, etc., etc. And I keep saying, I have something tells me that's a big misunderstanding, because the people they're referring to, the people who are not keen to get their licenses straight out of high school, are actually Generation Z, not us. Because the biggest buyers of SUVs, CUVs, crossover utility vehicles, electric vehicles, those are all millennials. And most importantly, those big buckies, they call them vans in the United States, those Ford 150s. All of those cars are being bought by millennials. And they're sitting at their all-time highs in terms of monthly sales, well, pre-COVID. Something that has never been seen before, because people are just, people my age and your age are literally going out there and buying these vehicles. So I tend to agree with you when you're saying we're going to go back into owning our own vehicles, because everyone is going to be a little bit paranoid with public transport to those who can afford. And definitely we're going to say, look, I'm safer in my car, and I'm going to sanitize the steering wheel. I'm going to change, the seats. If we got leather seats, I'm going to wipe them down with sanitizer or wet wipes, or the equivalent, but Clorox or whatever. But I'm not going to risk it again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I fully agree. I think one of the reasons why there was, just as a side note, that misconception around millennials is just because we started our lives, our grown-up lives, a little bit later. So millennials tend to travel a little bit in their 20s. They take longer to get married. They take longer to start having a family, and it's only when you have kids where you start thinking about a two-car garage house, and two vehicles. Like ask me. I mean, this has been we've been a two-car household for 10 months. And I'm 35 years old, so we just do things later, but we end up buying the cars. And then just perhaps just like the last two things on this slide that I thought was quite interesting. Obviously, working from home. I think Microsoft would be a net winner on this, as well as
Teams,
Zoom.
correct?
Yeah,
Zoom and Slack. Slack has seen some incredible pickup in their volumes, notwithstanding the fact that when they had like 1 million monthly active users, they were valued at $11 billion. So if you use a similar matrix to the increase to 60 million monthly active users for Microsoft, you can sort of gauge how much Microsoft Teams is worth if we're using those metrics. But even if you apply a 50% discount, it's still a big chunk of that market cap, and no one ever actually really thinks about it that way. I thought I'd just point it out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the increase in monthly active users in Teams has been absolutely crazy. And I think it's going to be a lot more important for Microsoft going forward, and they'll probably focus on it a little bit more as well.
They actually have been focusing on it quite a lot. It's just that they knew that the numbers would come. They just didn't know they were going to come this quickly and this fast, and because of a pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I think just the last one before I will stop sharing. I think shopping online is a very interesting thing to me. So, one of the things that I think has always been an issue with online shopping is just people haven't tried it, right? So
yes.
I think online shopping penetration, even in countries that shop online a lot, like the UK, has kind of been stuck in the 20s somewhere. So people weren't shopping online because they don't trust the security, and how do I return it, and I don't want to buy fresh goods online. I want to touch and feel it, and all the rest of it.
I've heard of that, and
but don't knock it before you
Yes.
try it, and they're
Yes.
all being
Yes.
forced to try it.
Yes. Yes. And obviously, the thing is, if you're an online, like you're Amazon Fresh right now, you're smiling because all it takes is for someone to try the convenience, right? And then once they see that, oh, it's instant and my food will be here in 2 hours. Why wasn't I doing all this before? I spent 3 hours shopping, going aisle to aisle, where here I've got a preset list. It learns my habits. And next time I come, when I try to buy all the things that I bought the last time I'm up there, I just click how many quantities I want and I click the cart, and in 2 hours it's here. And obviously, in the totalitarian, extreme, Vulcan kind of environment where we are living like zombies and robots, every month this thing has learned my habits, and it just sends me my essentials: toilet paper, toothpaste, whatever I need every month, or eggs. It already knows, the algorithm already knows what I go and buy and how frequent I go buy it. And I just see it on the mail here, and I see the notification go out on my credit card account. I'm just like, oh well, my food is here now. All my essentials are here. So, but that's the one extreme.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also why Amazon recently hit a fresh record high.
Yes.
Because just the ability to do that and the ability to leverage off something like this. I mean, I think they, like every week, I feel like I'm reading a headline in the FT saying Amazon hiring another 100,000 workers,
1,000.
Amazon hiring
Yes.
75,000 workers.
It felt like almost every third day we were seeing, something like that. I was like, oh, this is the same one as the old one. I was like, no, on top of.
Yeah, no, updated 12 minutes ago.
Ago, yes. And you're like, okay. But yeah, what I was going with actually getting the people to use the website is that for them, apart from the distribution centers, what they call the fulfillment centers, apart from that side, in terms of bloating of the pool, the talent pool, that's going to be, that's where they're going to be incurring more costs or overheads, or maybe fixed costs as well. But if you look at on the server side of things, I think these servers were ready to actually acquire a little bit more traffic than what we're seeing right now. That's why no one has actually complained about any lag or anything, even though they've seen traffic increase 60% per week. So this is they still got a lot of capacity to go, and to put in also a new data center is much cheaper than, for example, trying to build 10 new stores, or just to fulfill that. But obviously another argument to that is that when Amazon becomes big enough, the contra move, which is the gangster move, I think, that they could potentially do, is come back to bricks and mortar and just obliterate everyone, because it'll be more convenient for them. And I think that's why Amazon Fresh bought into the business that they bought into. I just forgot the name now. The Whole Foods. Yes, it's like the Woolies of North America. So that's the reason why they did that. They wanted to reverse into the bricks and mortar, because they didn't shut down any stores. Instead, they've increased the number of stores.
Yeah, it's just such a cool story. But yeah, I agree that they're probably going to move towards bricks and mortar. But I think that from a mega trend perspective, we might see like online adoption coming through, particularly in the northern hemisphere, where they haven't shut down economies completely. I can't get anything on
Yes.
Takealot.
But with that, bringing in the bricks and mortar actually frees the fulfillment center, stress, to focus on the bulk, to send to the stores, whereas the stores can do a click and go. If you still want to literally get out of your house and go pick it up, you can go pick it up. Or if you want to pick it up on your way from work to go home, you can pick it up and it'll be 25% cheaper, because you don't have to pay the delivery fee.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes absolute sense.
That's how Walmart has done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is how they've done it. And that's another
Yes.
company, along with Costco, that actually benefited from this whole debacle.
All-time highs as well.
Yeah, but I mean, perhaps one of the areas that we haven't spoken about, but that probably deserve a bit of airtime, is the healthcare sector. pharmaceuticals, hospital groups. What are your thoughts around that? How do you think they'll be impacted during this time?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, the health professionals, the cleaners that do all the, disinfecting and cleaning up all these facilities to ensure that they're sprinkling and nothing spreads while there's people working in there and there's people sick in there. They've done an exceptional and an incredible job for risking their lives like that every single day, waking up with a purpose. I think those people should all get medals or badges of honor of some sort, the honor of Mapungubu or something. But there's a lot of them, but yeah, they deserve it. Shout out from me and my team, obviously. Looking at the private space, the industry itself, I mean, I'm going to look at the guys that panicked last, which was because let's rewind first. We all sort of know about the coronavirus, like you said, end of January, sort of all the way to mid-February, and then the first case spreads out. I think it was the 10th or 12th, somewhere there, of February, just before mid-February, outside of China. We're talking about 3 cases, one reported in Italy, one reported in Spain, one reported in Germany. And then obviously it reaches, more Western Europe. We're talking about the United Kingdom, and obviously the first cases make it to America, etc., because it was easier for it to travel through the planes, and people weren't doing the correct checks in terms of, your temperature levels, etc. Even not that, because a lot of people go asymptomatic for about 2 weeks, so it's hard to actually pin it down. That's when things started happening, and some countries reacted the way they should, as you'd expect during a potential threat, to the health system, and the likes of the United Kingdom, they were last to actually react. And when they basically started to react, they said it was going to put a lot of pressure into the healthcare system, and they basically enact that all of the private operators become, help to the public by force, whether you like it or not. I mean, it's enacted that you will have to take these patients under the NHI rules, which they already had, which was, a positive on their front there. Yes, they will see increased volumes as a result if we use that as our benchmark or as our case study. But the problem is, on the business side of things, of anything that has to do with the patients, the patients industries, that you've got a cap, and you're not like the great operators of China, where you can just wake up one day and create 100 hospitals in a week. It's not that easy. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes in there, and there's a lot of machineries, specialized machineries, ventilators, etc., that you need for ICUs, all of these operating tables, etc. It's very hard to just all of a sudden increase your capacity. But the good news is that you're going to be operating at a capacity, maybe not at the kind of margins you would have liked, because now you've gone down to sort of regulated margins, but you're still going to be talking about full capacity for at least the next 18 months. So your business is sorted, and you will see a surge, but it's capped. That's the sad part. It's capped. Whereas internet businesses, Google, Zoom, all of those, they're not capped. You just put in an extra a data center, and you can accommodate twice what you used to accommodate previously.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about the South African example. So, we've been prepping now for this big exponential increase in COVID-19 cases, which thus far hasn't really come through. Probably in part due to the lockdown, but also probably a bit of luck on our side as well. But apparently these guys have not been doing any elective surgeries. So a lot of the South African hospitals are actually going to see occupancy rates that are much lower than what they used to, especially in March and April, where they haven't seen the COVID-19 volumes come through. So,
yes, obviously there's a lead lag thing going on there. So you're
going to have about 2 months with like 40% occupancy, because people
which is
aren't getting
problematic. Yeah. So people are not getting hip replacement. People are not getting the headache tablets or whatever they used to go, or Mac on the doctors, etc. So unfortunately, that's not going to be happening. But um, again, this is a double whammy. It's hard to pinpoint it what's going to happen exactly. But the fact that we went to lockdown, like you're saying, and we banned alcohol, which the casualties, that's where these private hospitals used to make most of their money. The ER divisions, you see a lot of volume. That has gone literally to zero. Go look at any doctor online, or real doctor online, on Twitter, and just go read their tweets about the ER going to zero. It's almost amazing what alcohol does to human beings, because all of the crime that was related was mostly due to alcohol consumption. It's not actually drugs. You're talking about abuse, general street fighting, anything that had to do with liquor is all low. And unfortunately, this is where these hospitals find themselves. So there's going to be that 3 month to 4 month lag. And obviously, they'll see much higher cases once we come out of the lockdown, which eventually we'll have to, because now we forced ourselves another 21 days to stay in, 21 days at the time of, the Sunday where he announced it. But you force people to actually struggle for the next additional days, 14 days, which is not good. It's not good, because most of these people sell their labor to actually make a living for their families. And to ask an African family who lives in a very 2-room shack, like not even 2 bedroom, just 2-room shack, 6 of them, to stay indoors is actually asking for trouble. This is why we've seen the lootings that are happening. If I'm selling my labor, my family is hungry, and you're asking us to stay indoors, it's not going to happen. Trust me, I'll rather end up in jail than see my family, suffering.
So, I mean, perhaps like on that note, and maybe to kind of wind down the conversation, even though I know the two of us can probably speak until kingdom comes. Um,
Yes.
so these, so if we're thinking about the end of the lockdown, what does that look like for you? Do you think it's going to be a phased approach? And what do you think, like perhaps together with that, what are your thoughts on what markets will do in
So
the next
the
12 months?
so an easy answer to what will happen to society is I don't know. That one's a hard one, but we can learn again from best practice. China has literally gone through the whole cycle, and they're now having their second cycle of new infections, which funny enough are coming from outside of China. Um, you know how the tables turn. Um, Looking at the business side of China, so we don't have a full view yet, because the numbers that we were getting now, they're still not COVID numbers. These are December numbers that are coming out of China. I mean, we've seen the luxury jewelry companies coming out with numbers from China, the luxury manufacturers of fancy clothing also, Tencent and the likes, all of them is just December numbers, and those, they look, good. But all of them have said they expect between something 85 to 90% of the business going poof, but we haven't actually seen what the numbers look like. And all of them said they have zero forecast. When you read a management statement where it says, Angazi, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 8 months. So we'd have to sit that one and wait. But markets are usually always forward looking. Like I said, they're usually 16 to 18 months forward looking. And the Chinese markets are actually kind of stabilizing right now. Not to the extent where they are saying we'll be out of economic ruin. Fully 100% will be firing on all cylinders, and will be able to be sending uh, goods outside of the country, because they are net producers, right? So they make their money by basically producing locally and sending things all across the planet. So it's not pricing in that, but it's pricing in a lot of stability, which I guess that's what the American markets, our base, basically is pricing in as well. That's why we're seeing a lot of kind of confusing stability or fake stability, if you want to put it like that. But that's just pricing in what's going to happen down the line. But there's still going to be surprises and hiccups in between the markets. Maybe America can't handle the situation for some reason, and the markets tank because of that, or the dollar weakens because of that. There's going to be a lot of those kind of surprises coming in between. But where we are right now today, as we're recording this podcast, there's still a lot of things that could happen. But right now, what we're seeing is a bit of stability on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of volatility over the next year or so in markets. And I think that, yeah, I mean, hopefully the data actually surprises us in a month or two's time. I think what we're going to see now is going to be absolutely horrible. Every single high frequency print you're going to see is going to be headline catching and worst ever insert.
In 13 years. Yes, yeah. I'm waiting for those 13 years.
Yeah, it can be anything. But I think that, as you mentioned rightly so, markets look through periods of this, and we will probably get some sort of stability ultimately, because that's what markets are reflecting right now. And perhaps just as kind of a last little thing to add, Bitcorp actually came out yesterday. Sorry, I just have to.
No problem.
Bitcorp actually came out yesterday, and they said that their Chinese business is returning to pre-crisis volumes. Bitcorp, of course, sorry, I was talking about Bitcorp. Bitcorp, of course, is in the food services business, so they deliver to
supplying a lot. Well, their high margin business is supplying a lot to individual restaurants, not like restaurant chains, because those are those are the ones that just keep the lights on. The profits come from the standalones. So that's interesting. But China again is very advanced compared to other markets. Like, I'm sorry to pick on Europe because they're still in the 1920s. When it comes to food delivery, because I don't think much on the food delivery side of things got affected in China. I mean, I've got friends who live in China. They've been living life as normal when it comes to, I can still get my takeaway the way I used to get it. So those volumes didn't shrink. The big problems that we would have seen was on the food traffic side of things. But then again, if I used to eat at here in Rosebank Tasha's, and I really absolutely love their food, and they were still delivering, I would still be ordering their food. And maybe with a higher frequency than what I've used to, because I don't want to cook maybe lunch, or I don't want to cook dinner. So I might be ordering at Tasha's a day instead of ordering Tasha's every fourth day. So that sort of nets off the foot traffic.
Yeah, I think just maybe anecdotally to end off, I hope that from a lockdown perspective, regulations kind of calm down somewhat as the weeks go forward. Perhaps actually opening up those kind of takeaway platforms, opening up online sales again, opening up the mining industry. I mean, these are areas where we can have pretty quick wins in terms of...
You're forgetting the most important, liquor sales.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be that person, but yes, my wine is finished. So, I mean, these are the types of things where you can get economic activity back pretty quickly, and you can at least at some level set off some of the damage that has been done to the economy, which I think in certain spaces is probably going to be irreparable.
Yeah, the extreme lockdown situation that we have applied in South Africa is definitely not reality as we know it. And obviously it has put a shock into the system, a much higher shock than the average country that is in lockdown. And as a result, we're going to feel more pain than the average country because of the COVID-19. And when it comes to recovery, we are not kind of like a country that has, all the wheels of the train in the sporters at the same time. We're still working on the sporters actually, so it's not like that. We're a developing country when it comes to those things, so we need to put that. It's it's easier for the business to go down. It's very harder to build the business back from scratch. So that we must never forget that. And this has been caused by just literally, I don't know, a month of lockdown. It's going to be much harder than the actual effect had we just the alternative, which was to do nothing. But obviously, the infections would have been worse. That's the trade-off.
I'm also trying to be optimistic about where we can go over the next few years, and hopefully that this provides time for the guys in charge to realize where the reforms are required, what is needed for us to actually get to a point where we can get to super high sustainable economic growth, which will ultimately take us forward quite quickly. And I don't think that it's very outlandish to think that is a possibility, particularly given how well the crisis has been dealt with from a health perspective so far.
The skeptics have said that the reaction to the virus, exceptional from South Africa, but to abandon the economy 100%, very poor. Yeah, and we're gonna have to come back and try to manage the economy like how we've managed the virus. And politicians in South Africa are not actually quite good at that, but it's not going to be a political debate.
Well, perhaps we can chat about it again when we've got about 6 or 7 months under the belt, because this has been fabulous. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. This was lovely, Chantal.
Yes, let's do it again sometime.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.